Hi, I'm Jenny Brown, the collection manager of the Ware collection of Blaszka glass models of plants, more popularly known as the glass flowers at Harvard. We're here in the Harvard Museum of Natural History, where the collection is on permanent display. The collection was made from 1886 until 1936 by Leopold and Rudolf Blaszka, father and son glass artists who lived and worked in Hosterwitz, Germany, which is right outside of Dresden. Professor George Lincoln Goodale, the first director of Harvard's Botanical Museum, wanted to create some kind of public display of plants that would be exciting, but also serve the needs of educating researchers, students, and the public. The way that plants were usually preserved and displayed were on herbarium specimen sheets. Plants would be pressed and flattened, and during that process, they would lose their colors and the forms would be distorted. Common modeling techniques that were used during that time included wax and paper mache, but Professor Goodale found both of those materials to be a little crude and not exactly as detailed as he wanted for the permanent plant display that he envisioned. Professor Goodale happened to see in the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard glass models of marine invertebrates. The Blaszkas had established a very successful business making the models of marine invertebrates for institutions around the world, including jellyfish, octopi, nudibranchs, sea anemones, animals that were difficult to preserve and display, similar to how plants are equally difficult to preserve and display. In these glass models of marine invertebrates, Professor Goodale thought that whoever made those might be able to create models of plants that were as refined and delicate as he hoped for. In 1886, Professor Goodale traveled to Germany in the hopes of convincing the Blaszkas to make some glass models of plants for Harvard. Eventually, Professor Goodale was able to convince them to make a few models on speculation. Two women, Elizabeth C. Ware and her daughter Mary Lee Ware, were so taken with the models that they offered to fund the production of some more glass models of plants. For the next 3 years, the Blaszkas would spend half of the year making glass models of plants and the other half of the year making models of marine invertebrates for other institutions around the world. In 1890, the Blaszkas expressed an interest in focusing on only one endeavor, and Harvard negotiated a contract with them for a 10-year period during which they would only make glass models of plants. There are 4 distinct series of models in the collection. The largest depicts systematic relationships among flowering plants. Another models the life cycles of cryptogams. A third series illustrates plant-insect relationships, and the last shows fruits and diseases that affect them. This model of the Salvia plant is an example of a model from the insect pollination series. In it, you see 2 examples of life-size plants, as well as enlarged details. The first enlargement shows the structure of the salvia flower. The second couple of models shows a life-size representation as well as an enlarged detail, showing pollen being deposited on the back of an insect pollinator. The last set of models shows the life-size model and the enlarged detail of the same bee entering a different plant at another time, when the flower has matured and the stigma is in a position to touch the back of the insect where the pollen was previously deposited. The use of a life-size model as well as an enlarged detail thoroughly illustrate the pollination process. This model of a pitcher plant is one of the most spectacular models in the collection. We have similar actual specimens in the Harvard University herbaria. By comparing the actual specimen with the glass model, one can really see the effectiveness of the glass models of plants. This model was made in 1906 by Rudolf Blaszka and is quite large in size and extremely detailed. By comparing these later models to some of the earlier ones that the Blaszkas made, one can really see how they kept challenging themselves and improving upon their technique. While the Blaszkas shared very little about their working processes, and we know very little about the details of their techniques, they were very adamant about stressing that they were not employing any kind of tricks in their glassworking process. It was really their unique skill set that makes their lamp working so special. The Blaschkas practiced lamp working, which was a very common glass working technique of the time period. In lamp working, glass is melted over an open flame, which is fed by air from a foot-operated bellows. The glass is melted and manipulated using a variety of tools to pull, pinch, cut, and shape the glass. The Blaschkas worked very closely together. They weren't working on one model at a time. Rather, they would fashion many parts to many models all at once. Most of the models have internal wire armatures to add support for the long stem structures and leaves. The Blaschkas would slide these pieces onto the wire armatures and then attach everything using either hide glue or melted glass frit. Harvard sent the Blaschkas seeds, plant cuttings, and specimens to observe in making the models. The Blaschkas had a garden that they cultivated on their property in Germany and had access to greenhouses and botanic gardens in the Dresden area. The Blaschkas really focused on achieving scientific accuracy in their models, and in 1894, a botanist named Walter Dean wanted to see how accurate the models were in their finer details under microscopic examination and compare it against his own herbarium specimens. He observed 16 models and only focused on one, this model of Aralia Spinosa, in an article he wrote for the Botanical Gazette. He counted approximately 2,500 individual buds and blooms, each with their respective pistils and stamens. He also found that the details on the backside of the model that weren't visible on display to be just as accurate. The last group of models that Rudolph made were of diseases that affect fruits in the Rosaceae family. This model shows a branch with apricots that show the ripe fruit through the different stages of brown rot. This model shows the effect of apple scab. People often ask me what my favorite model in the collection is, and I can honestly say that I don't have one. I'm in the collection every day, and I'm always amazed. I always see something new, and I always see something exciting that I might not have noticed before. Whether it's a large life-size model that impresses me daily, or a detail model that I find particularly special, having noticed it on a walk through the exhibit. It's a truly incredible and singular collection, and really one of Harvard's greatest treasures.